For decades, scientists and anthropologists looked into the eyes of millions of people and saw an unsolved mystery. The vast majority of the human population possesses brown eyes, a trait fueled by high concentrations of melanin, the same dark pigment that protects our skin from ultraviolet radiation. Yet a small percentage of the global population, primarily those with European ancestry, carries a striking blue hue in their irises. For most of the 20th century, no one knew where this trait came from or how it spread. The question seemed cosmetic, but it carried a deep implication about human history and shared ancestry. If blue eyes appeared independently multiple times in different parts of the world, they would represent a common evolutionary response to environment. If they appeared only once and spread through migration, they would tell a story of a single ancestor. No one knew which explanation was correct. The mystery remained open. Anthropologists speculated about climate, sunlight, or sexual selection, but these were ideas without genetic proof. Now, new evidence has finally settled this question and provided the definitive closure we have sought for generations. The investigation into this mystery began with a fundamental understanding of how light interacts with the human body. To understand why some eyes are blue, we must first understand that blue pigment does not exist in the human eye. Brown eyes are the result of melanin-absorbing light. Blue eyes, however, are a feat of physics known as the Tyndall effect. This is the same phenomenon that makes the sky look blue. When light enters the iris, it hits the stroma, which is a layer of tissue. If the stroma lacks melanin, the light particles scatter, and only the shorter blue wavelengths are reflected back to the observer. For decades, scientists knew the physics, but they did not know the genetic command that stripped the melanin away. They were looking for a biological switch. This search led researchers to chromosome 15, specifically to two genes known as OCA2 and HERC2. The first major reveal in this case occurred in the early 2000s when geneticists mapped the OCA2 gene. This gene codes for the P protein, which is essential for the production of melanin. If the OCA2 gene is completely broken or missing, the result is albinism, a condition where a person has no pigment in their skin, hair, or eyes. Scientists initially thought that blue eyes might be a partial mutation of OCA2, a slight glitch that reduced its efficiency. However, this theory did not fit the data. If it were a random glitch, we would see hundreds of different variations of blue eyes across the world. Instead, the genetic signature was remarkably consistent. This suggested that something else was controlling the OCA2 gene. The real breakthrough came when researchers at the University of Copenhagen, led by Professor Hans Eyberg, published their findings in the journal Nature Genetics. They analyzed the DNA of 800 blue-eyed individuals from diverse regions, including Denmark, Turkey, and Jordan, using mitochondrial DNA analysis, which tracks maternal lineage, and nuclear DNA sequencing, which looks at the core genetic material from both parents. They searched for commonalities. They found a specific genetic marker, a single nucleotide polymorphism or SNP, located not in the OCA2 gene itself, but in the neighboring HERC2 gene. SNP is a variation at a single position in a DNA sequence. In this case, the SNP in the HERC2 gene acted as a biological dimmer switch. It did not turn off the melanin production entirely, but it restricted the action of the OCA2 gene in the iris. This limited the production of melanin to a very specific level, creating the blue effect. The most shocking evidence from this study was the uniformity of the results. Every single one of the 800 participants, regardless of their nationality, carried the exact same mutation in the exact same spot on their DNA. In the world of genetics, this is the equivalent of a fingerprint at a crime scene. If the trait had evolved multiple times, we would see different mutations in different families. The fact that every blue-eyed person on Earth shares this identical sequence proves that the mutation occurred only once. It happened in one individual who lived thousands of years ago. Every blue-eyed person alive today is a direct descendant of that single ancestor. The debate over multiple origins is now over. This is a confirmed single-source event in human history. But when did this ancestor live? To solve the timeline, scientists turned to the field of paleogenomics, the study of ancient DNA extracted from fossilized remains. For a long time, the oldest known humans with blue eyes were thought to be from the Neolithic period around 5,000 years ago when farming began to spread across Europe. But the timeline was pushed back significantly by a discovery in 2014. Archaeologists in Spain excavated a cave known as La Braña Arentero and found the remains of a 7,000-year-old hunter-gatherer. They extracted DNA from the tooth enamel, where genetic material is protected from environmental decay. They used mass spectrometry, a technique that measures the mass of molecules to identify their chemical structure, to sequence his entire genome. The results from the Labrana man were the first major, but then they discovered moment in the investigation. He had the dark skin genes common to African populations, but he also possessed the exact HER2 mutation for blue eyes. This proved that blue eyes existed in Europe at least 7,000 years ago, long before the arrival of light skin. This discovery connects three separate findings from the 1990s and 2000s into one coherent timeline. We now know that for thousands of years, the first blue-eyed people were dark-skinned hunter-gatherers. The pieces finally fit together. This was not a trait that evolved alongside light skin to absorb vitamin D. It was an independent event that happened much earlier. The investigation then moved even further back in time. In 2016, researchers analyzed the remains of a man found at the Villa Bruna site in Italy, dating back 14,000 years. This was during the tail end of the last ice age, when woolly mammoths still roamed the edges of the retreating glaciers. The genetic analysis, which maps ancestry by comparing DNA sequences, proved that he also carried the blue eye allele. This pushed the origin of the trait back to at least 14,000 years ago. This date is critical because it marks a period of massive climatic shift. As the ice sheets melted, small groups of humans began to move and intermingle. We now have the complete sequence. The mutation appeared roughly 10,000 to 15,000 years ago in a single individual living near the Black Sea region. But how did this single mutation survive and eventually reach nearly 10% of the global population? This part of the mystery required an analysis of demographic shifts and population bottlenecks. A bottleneck occurs when a population size is significantly reduced, often by environmental changes, leaving only a few survivors to pass on their genes. During the transition from the Mesolithic hunter-gatherer era to the Neolithic farming era, the population of Europe changed dramatically. Farmers from the Near East migrated into Europe, bringing brown eyes and light skin. For a moment, the blue eye trait was at risk of being diluted and lost forever. However, the evidence shows that the blue eye allele did not disappear. Instead, it surged. This brings us to a near-miss moment in our history. If the original population of blue-eyed hunter-gatherers had been completely replaced by the incoming farmers, the trait would have vanished. But DNA evidence confirms that these two groups did more than just live near each other. They had children together. We know this because modern European genomes contain a mix of both ancestries. Genetic analysis shows that the blue eye mutation was conserved and even preferred. This is now confirmed by looking at the frequency of the HER2 allele in ancient skeletons compared to modern populations.